So let's get into Taurus risings year ahead, Aries to Pisces season 2022 to 2023. If we haven't met yet, my name is Shuka. I am a traditional astrologer that uses both Hellenistic and ancient Persian techniques in order to decipher the language of the stars and map out what's coming up for you. Feel free to like and subscribe for future videos that help you maximize your potential using the stars, like they say, as above, so below. In order to really jump into spring season, which covers Aries, Taurus, and Gemini season, we have to go back a little bit in time to December 29, 2021, which is when Jupiter moved into your Pisces 11th house. Now, Jupiter is at home here in Pisces, so it has all of the resources it needs in order to expand and grow things to the best of its quote-unquote ability. And the 11th house deals with things like your social network, social organizations, networking in general, as well as friend groups and future goals. With Jupiter here in that 11th house and it remains here until May 10th of 2022, it's a really big expansion in this area of life. Think new friends, new networks, and a lot of new activity in your future-oriented goals. And between February 3rd of 2022 through April 29th of 2022, all planets are stationed direct. So this is a very forward-moving flow. Things are kind of moving rapidly, very little rethinking or reanalyzing and revisiting things. Think full steam ahead. On March 20th, 2022, we jump into the new zodiacal year with the sun moving into Aries. This marks the beginning of spring, the beginning of the new year, and the beginning of everything we're going to talk about here today. On April 4th, 2022, Mars conjunct Saturn in your Aquarius 10th house. Now, the 10th house deals with things like your public image and your public career. And with Mars, the planet of action and forging forward, meeting up with Saturn, especially in Aquarius, whose favorite word is no, no, no. It's restriction, it's boundaries. So think action being met with boundaries on this day. Pay special attention to what boundaries or restrictions are brought up or what you're being told no to, as this could affect how you take action going forward in this area of life, your public image and your public career. On April 12th, 2022, Jupiter conjuncts Neptune in your Pisces 11th house. Take extra caution to not make any irreversible decisions around this time, particularly in social networks, social groups, and future goals, as there's potential for things to be too good to be true or to have some delusion or confusion around what's actually going on. It's best to wait for this transit to pass before you make any decisions that you can't go back on. On April 29th, 2022, Pluto stations retrograde in your Capricorn 9th house. And this ends the all forward motion movement that we've had up until this point. And with Pluto retrograde in your 9th house of foreign travel, long distance travel, whatever that means to you, as well as religion, philosophy, ethics, things of that nature, there's a rethinking of deep-rooted things that you might have surrounding this area of life, potentially deep-rooted beliefs that may need some rethinking or reanalyzing or revisiting before you can find a clear direct path forward here. Keep in mind that Pluto is the planet of transformation, so there is potential for certain ideas or ideals that you may have held to really be shed down to the bare bones in order to be rebuilt in a way that serves you best moving forward. On April 30th, 2022, there is a partial solar eclipse in your Taurus first house. Now, this partial solar eclipse taking place in your Taurus first house is a catalyst event that sets off a new beginning in your area of self, ego, and body. And whatever this catalyst event may be will play out over the course of the next 6 months. On May 10th, 2022, Jupiter enters your Aries 12th house. And this house has to do with mental health and isolation. And with Jupiter entering here, think of it as a expanded focus on your mental health, things that may cause you stress, things that may push you toward isolation or kind of recuperation in that sense. On May 15th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Scorpio 7th house. Now, total lunar eclipses, opposite to the solar ones, are a catalyzing event that starts an ending in an area of life. Now, don't panic. I know the 7th house deals with intimate relationships and romance. It can also deal with business partnerships, any kind of one-on-one long-term relationship, contracts, things of that nature. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a breakup. It could, but it doesn't. It's just an ending of some kind. So it could be an ending of maybe how you relate to people, or it could be an ending of what kind of relationships you want, or it could be an ending that actually ends up serving you better in the future surrounding the way you approach these relationships, what you expect your worth to be, or what you'll expect or what you need from them. On June 4th, 2022, Saturn stations retrograde in your Aquarius 10th house. Now, when Saturn stations retrograde, already being the planet of restrictions and boundaries and no, think of it as transitioning from being an external factor to one that's much more internalized, where you're revisiting maybe your restrictions or your boundaries that you've placed on your public image or your public career. And this takes us into the summer season, which includes Cancer, Leo, and Virgo season. It's a lot slower than the spring, and it's much more about kind of sitting down and rethinking and internalizing and kind of reflecting more than it is about taking action forward and what it is that you want to do. This doesn't mean you're going to be completely stagnant. It does mean you may be rethinking a lot of things. On June 28th, 2022, Neptune stations retrograde in your Pisces 11th house. This is sort of like a rethinking of dreams or creativity, dealing with your social networks, your future goals, and potentially any friends, organizations, things like that, clubs, etc. On July 28, 2022, Jupiter stations retrograde in your Aries 12th house that deals with mental health and isolation. When Jupiter entered your Aries 12th house, there is an expansion in this area, and with it stationing retrograde, think of it as a rethinking or a reanalyzing of whatever expansion may have occurred here that you can then implement going forward. On August 24th, 2022, Uranus stations retrograde in your Taurus 1st house. Now, Uranus has been partying up in here for a while now. You're used to its disruptive energy. It comes with innovative solutions as well. And with Uranus stationing retrograde in your Taurus 1st house, think of it as a slowing down of things that have to do with your own self, your own body, your own ego, your characteristics, personality, and a more internalization of finding creative solutions to go forward with on how you want to approach things going forward. This takes us into the fall season, which includes Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius season, and it's a little bit more busy than summer. Actually, it's a lot more busy, so let's get into it. On October 8th, 2022, Pluto stations direct in your Capricorn 9th house. So that rethinking that you may have been doing in the areas of life surrounding philosophy, moral ethics, religion, as well as foreign travel will be less internalized and less revisiting and more forward moving motion. So think of whatever rebirth or transformation may have taken place, you'll now be able to incorporate this and move forward with it. On October 22nd, 2022, Saturn stations direct in your Aquarius 10th house of public image and public career. Think of this as whatever boundaries you may have rethought or whatever restrictions or rejection you may have rethought that occurred during that retrograde period, you now get to use this and implement it as this takes forward motion, which means a more action-oriented, external fashion motion. On October 25th, 2022, we'll have a partial solar eclipse in your Scorpio 7th house. So if you remember back in May, we had a lunar eclipse here where there was the catalyst event starting off a chain of events that lead to a ending of some kind in this area of relationships, one-on-one relationships, contracts, business partnerships, things of that nature. Well, the partial solar eclipse here is a catalyst event that starts a new beginning. So think that something had to end in order for a new beginning to occur. And this is where you'll really see the catalyst event that occurs. Pay attention to what comes about here, because a lot of times with eclipses, it's not until the 6 months are over that you look back and you're like, oh, if that hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be in this position and I'm way better off now than I was when I started. On October 27th, 2022, Jupiter retrograde moves back into your Pisces 11th house. So remember, it was here before it was direct, and there was an expansion in this area of life dealing with your social networks, your groups, your organizations, and your future goals. Now it's almost like after going into that area of mental health and isolation and really thinking about how things played out there, there's a rethinking to figure out exactly how you want to move forward or show up in these social groups or social networks. On October 30th, 2022, Mars stations retrograde in your Gemini 2nd house. Now, the 2nd house deals with things like your personal resources, your finances, and things that are of value to you. Not always necessarily monetary, but definitely things that you value yourself. And with Mars stationing retrograde here in Gemini, think of it as a pause on taking this fast-paced action to a much more slowed down rethinking of how it is that you take action in your finances or with your resources. On November 8th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Taurus first house of self, body, image, ego. Now, back in April, there was that catalyst event that led to a new beginning in this area of life for you. This is the catalyst event that leads to an ending. So it's almost like there was a new beginning and all of these things played out for you over the course of 6 months. And now there's a ending of some kind that allows you to incorporate whatever changes you need to for the future. On November 23rd, 2022, Jupiter stations direct in your Pisces 11th house of friendships, network, social groups, future goals. So whatever rethinking you may have done here, it's time to take that and implement it into an action moving forward. On December 3rd, 2022, Neptune stations direct in your Pisces 11th house. So dreams, creativity surrounding future goals or these social organizations or networks are now sort of back on track and there's a little bit more clarity, so to speak. On December 20th, 2022, Jupiter re-enters your Aries 12th house. This is the house of mental health, isolation, kind of stress reduction, how we process the internal, so to speak. And there's a new expansion here. So remember, it dipped in here, it retrograded, there was a rethinking, and now it's almost like you're ready to kind of push forward completely with this expansion in this mental health area of life. And this brings us to the final season of the Zodiac, winter season, which incorporates Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces season. On January 12th, 2023, Mars stations direct in your Gemini second house. So whatever rethinking of actions that you took place here in your area of finances, personal resources, values, think of it as fast-paced action that's really able to take charge. On January 22nd, 2023, Uranus stations direct in your Taurus first house. So think whatever rethinking of innovative solutions that you may have had, it's now time to implement them in that area of self, body, image, and ego. Between January 22nd, 2023 until April 21st, 2023, we'll have another period where all planets are stationed direct that sort of propel things into a rapid moving, go, go, go sort of vibe. On March 7th, 2023, Saturn will exit where it's been for quite some time, your Aquarius 10th house of public career and public image, where it may have placed some restrictions or put some structure in that area of life, and it will move into your Pisces 11th house. So this is a generalized reading. Keep in mind that Saturn and Mars have different effects based on whether you're a day or night chart, but with Saturn moving into your Pisces 11th house of friendship, social networks, and future goals, think some structure or boundaries or restriction in this area of life as opposed to your public image or career where it's been for the last, 2.5, 3 years. So I'm just throwing these 2 days in here because the astrology looks sort of wild. March 15th, 2023 and March 16th, 2023, there's a lot of action. To quote Marin, she called it a passive-aggressive mess. The sun in Pisces, your 11th house of friends, social networks, groups, and future goals will square Mars in your Gemini second house of finances, resources, personal things of value. And then on March 16th, Mercury will join this party by conjuncting the Sun and Neptune in your Pisces 11th house of friendship, social groups, and future goals. And they will all square Mars in Gemini, which is your second house of finances and resources. Think of this as a passive-aggressive mess between your social networks and your groups and how it affects your personal values, resources, and finances. And to top it all off, Venus in your Aries 12th house, which is the house of isolation and mental health, will square Pluto in Capricorn, which is in your 9th house of foreign travel, in morals, ethics, philosophy, religion. So there's a lot going on. It's passive aggressive AF. Pay attention to it. Almost always when there's tension like this, it really breaks things forward in order to make a much better future for you. Which brings us to March 20th, 2023. The sun re-enters Aries, marking the beginning of the next zodiacal year. So let's go through the retrogrades. We'll start with Mercury retrograde. There's 3 of them this year. On May 10th, 2022, Mercury stations retrograde in your Gemini second house, which deals with your personal resources, your finances, and your values. This is a great time to rethink, revisit, reanalyze whatever thoughts or communication you have surrounding this area of life. Whenever there's a Mercury retrograde, expect delays, expect things to be wonky or not go off the way that they should, and try not to start anything new. Definitely don't cut your hair or sign any contracts if you can avoid it. It is a time to revisit things from the past as opposed to starting new things. It will retrograde back into your Taurus first house, which is a rethinking of the area of life surrounding yourself, your body, your ego. On September 9th, 2022, Mercury stations retrograde in your Libra 6th house. This house deals with subordinates, pets, being of service to others, as well as your physical health. So think of it as revisiting or rethinking things that have to do with this area of life. It will retrograde back into your Virgo 5th house, which deals with things like sex, romance, fun, playfulness, creativity, and children, anything you really birth into the world. So it's a time to revisit or review, reanalyze things in that area of life. It will be retrograde until it stations direct on October 2nd, 2022 in your Virgo 5th house. And this brings us to the final Mercury retrograde of the zodiacal year. On December 29th, 2022, Mercury stations retrograde in your Capricorn 9th house. This deals with foreign travel, philosophy, morals, ethics, and religion. Expect a rethinking or revisiting in this area of life until it stations direct on January 18th of 2023. For the other planetary retrogrades, Mars stations retrograde on October 30th, 2022 in your Gemini 2nd house of personal resources, finances, and values. So expect a rethinking in how you take action in this area of life until it stations direct here on January 12th, 2023. Jupiter stations retrograde July 28th, 2022 in your Aries 12th house of mental health and isolation. It will retrograde back into your Pisces 11th house, which deals with social networks, groups, future goals, things of that nature, until it stations direct there on November 23rd, 2022. Saturn stations retrograde June 4th, 2022 in your Aquarius 10th house of public image and career. Expect a rethinking of boundaries or restrictions surrounding this area of life until it stations direct on October 22nd, 2022 in your same Aquarius 10th house. The outer planet retrogrades, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Uranus stations retrograde August 24th, 2022 in your Taurus first house of self, body, image, ego. It will station direct January 22nd, 2023 in that same house. Neptune stations retrograde June 28th, 2022 in your Pisces 11th house, dealing with social groups, friends, networks, clubs, organizations, and future goals until it stations direct here on December 4th, 2022. And Pluto stations retrograde on April 29th, 2022 in your Capricorn 9th house, which deals with things like foreign travel, religion, philosophy, morals, and ethics, until it stations direct here on October 8th, 2022. And this brings us to a recap of the eclipses taking place this zodiacal year. On April 30th, 2022, there is a partial solar eclipse in your Taurus first house of self, body, image, and ego. Think of this as a catalyst event that sets off a chain reaction to a new beginning in this area of life. On May 15th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Scorpio 7th house. Think of this as a catalyst event that sets off a chain reaction to an ending in how you deal with one-on-one or personal relationships, whether they be business or contractual or intimate. On October 25th, 2022, there is a partial solar eclipse in your Scorpio 7th house. So think of this as a catalyst to a new beginning in that area of life surrounding intimate relationships, business partnerships, and contracts. And on November 8th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Taurus first house of self, body, image, and ego, a catalyst event that sets off a chain reaction to an ending in that area of life. So that's it for your zodiacal year ahead, Aries to Pisces season 2022 to 2023. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, particularly comment. I love to read how these zodiacal transits play out for everybody. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.